The counter was already clean when I started wiping it. I want to be precise about that, because it's the whole thing. It wasn't dirty. I'd wiped it that morning. There was nothing on it, no crumbs, no ring from a cup, nothing a person could point to. And there I was, at nearly 11 at night, cloth in hand, going over it again, slow and careful, corner to corner, as if something needed doing. And here's the part I couldn't explain for a long time. It helped. When I finished, when the surface was clean that I had just cleaned, I felt something settle in me, a small relief, all out of proportion to wiping a counter that didn't need wiping. Something in me was a little quieter than it had been 5 minutes before. I stood there afterward and thought, what did I just fix? Because it felt like I'd fixed something. And nothing on that counter had changed, because nothing on it was ever wrong. Maybe you know this too. Maybe you've caught yourself straightening something that was already straight, or organizing a drawer that was already fine, and felt that same small, strange relief, and wondered, if you stopped to wonder at all, what it was actually for. I'm Daniel, and I've spent a long time watching myself do this and telling myself the obvious story about why. The obvious story is wrong, or at least it isn't the real one. There's something else the cleaning is doing, and it took me years to see it, because it hides so well behind the thing it looks like. Let me walk you toward it the way I got there, because if I just tell you now, it'll sound like less than it is. The obvious story is that I like things clean, and I do. That's what makes it such a good hiding place. If someone had asked me why I was wiping that counter, I'd have said I like a clean kitchen, and it would have been true, and it would have ended the conversation. Of course you clean. Everybody cleans. Nothing to see. But there's a problem with that explanation, and it's the crack that eventually let me see the rest. If the cleaning were really about the mess, then a clean house would end the urge. You'd clean, it would be done, and you'd feel finished. That's how it works with an actual problem. You solve it, and it stays solved, and you move on. That's not how this works. The house gets clean, and the urge doesn't end. I'll have a spotless kitchen and find myself wiping the counter anyway. I'll organize a drawer that was already organized last week. Being finished doesn't feel finished. And a thing that isn't satisfied by being completed was never really about completion. So the mess wasn't the subject. That was the first crack. If it isn't the dirt, then what am I actually doing when I clean something that's already clean? I didn't have the answer, but I'd started to notice something else. Not what the cleaning was, but when it happened, because it doesn't happen randomly. That was the thing that turned it for me. I started paying attention to the timing, and the timing gave it away. The nights I found myself wiping an already clean counter were not random nights. They clustered, and they clustered around a particular kind of moment, the moments when something else, somewhere else, had come unsettled. I'll give you a small one first, because it's the kind that's easy to miss. There was an evening I'd had one of those conversations that doesn't end so much as just stop. With someone I care about, nothing dramatic, no raised voices, just a few things said that couldn't be unsaid, and then the call was over, and the thing between us was left sitting there, open, with no way for me to close it from my end. It was going to take time, or it was going to take them, and neither of those was mine to hurry. I got off the phone, and within a few minutes I was cleaning the stovetop, lifting the grates, wiping under them, working at a mark that had been there so long it was practically part of the finish. I remember the exact feeling, not thinking about the stove at all, thinking about the conversation, and scrubbing like the stove was the problem. Because the stove I could do something about, the conversation I couldn't. So my hands went where they could actually change something, while the thing I actually cared about sat in the other room, unmoved, waiting on a person who wasn't me. I didn't understand it that night. But it was the same shape as the worst version, and the worst version is the one that finally made me see it. A few years back, I was waiting on some news, the kind you can't do anything about. It was being decided somewhere else by other people, and all I could do was wait for a phone to ring. It concerned someone I loved, and how it went was entirely out of my hands, and there was a stretch of days where I just had to carry the not knowing around. And I cleaned that house top to bottom, not because it was dirty. I scrubbed a bathroom that was already clean. I reorganized a closet I hadn't opened in a year. I found myself one evening wiping down the inside of a kitchen cabinet, the inside, with the phone sitting on the counter beside me, silent, holding the one thing I actually wanted and couldn't reach. I didn't see it at the time. At the time, it just felt like I couldn't sit still. But looking back, the shape of it is so clear I almost can't believe I missed it. The thing I needed fixed was the thing I couldn't touch, so I fixed everything I could reach instead. That was when the question changed. It stopped being, why do I clean things that are clean, and became something harder. Why does it help? What is a clean cabinet giving me exactly when the thing I'm actually afraid of hasn't moved at all? Here's where it opened up, and I have to go a little sideways to get to it. Think about how much of your life doesn't answer you. You say the careful thing to the person you love, and they hear something else, and there's nothing you can do to make them hear what you meant. You do the work, and the job goes another way regardless. You make the plan, and the plan falls apart on its own schedule. Someone you care about makes their own decisions, and there is not one thing you can do about it. The news you're waiting on gets decided somewhere you're not. The future, the whole of it, refuses to take instruction from you. That's most of a life, if you're honest. Most of what matters is happening slightly outside your reach, running on its own logic, answering to no effort of yours. And you live inside that. The constant low fact that the things you most want to fix are exactly the things you can't. And then there's the counter. You wipe the counter, and the counter is clean, immediately, completely. You did a thing, and the world responded exactly the way you intended, right now, with no delay and no argument. You straighten the chair, and the chair is straight. You organize the drawer, and the drawer is orderly. You act, and the result arrives, and it is precisely the result you asked for. That's the difference. That's the whole difference. Most of my life won't do that, and the counter will. I think that's what I was actually doing at 11 at night with that cloth. I wasn't cleaning. I was reaching for the one small square foot of my life that would still answer me, because everything I actually needed to fix had stopped answering, and I needed, badly, for something too. So here's the closest I've come to understanding it, and I'll say it plainly now that we're here, because now it means what it should. Sometimes the cleaning isn't about the house at all. The house is just the one part of your life that still does what you tell it, at a moment when the important parts won't. The surface answers, the future doesn't. The room can be put right. The thing outside the room, the person, the news, the decision, the whole uncooperative rest of it, cannot. And when you can't fix the thing that's actually wrong, there is a real and human relief in fixing something, anything, and having the world respond the way you meant it to. Even if it's only a counter. Maybe especially then, because the counter is the one thing in reach that won't tell you no. It's not weakness and it's not a disorder, and I'm not going to dress it up as either. It's a person who needs, for a moment, to matter to their own life, to do a thing and see it land, reaching for the nearest place that will let them. The kitchen becomes the one room in the house of your life where you're still in charge. I catch myself doing it now, and I mostly know what it is. That's the only thing that's changed. But I know now. When my hands go looking for a surface to put right, I know it's not the surface I'm after. I'm looking for the one thing that will still answer me, while the real thing sits there, not answering. And here's the part that's true, and that I won't leave out, because leaving it out would be the comfortable lie. The relief is real, but it doesn't fix the thing. That's the whole ache of it, once you see it. The cleaning works, the room does become orderly, and you do feel that settling, and it is not fake. I want to be clear about that. But the thing you were actually trying to fix is still exactly where it was. The counter is spotless and the news still hasn't come. The stovetop shines and the conversation is still open. You made one small part of the world behave, and for a moment that was enough. And then you look up and everything you couldn't touch is still untouched. I finished that cabinet the night I was waiting on the news, wiped the inside of it clean, and then I stood in a kitchen that was cleaner than it had any need to be, and the phone was still silent, and nothing that mattered had moved at all. The house was in order. The thing was not. And some part of me had known, the whole time I was scrubbing, that it wouldn't be. That a clean cabinet was never going to reach the thing I was actually afraid of. I did it anyway. Because sometimes making one small thing answer you is the only move you've got while you wait for the large thing to decide itself without you. I'll leave you with this. The counter is clean again tonight. I wiped it a little while ago, the way I do, though there was nothing on it. And I know now what I was doing, which I didn't used to. I wasn't fixing the counter. The counter was never the thing. Nothing outside this room has changed. The counter just answered me when I needed something to. That's all it ever was. And knowing that doesn't stop me reaching for it on the nights the rest of it won't answer. Tell me in the comments, when you start cleaning something that doesn't really need it, do you ever notice what else is happening in your life right then? I'd like to know. And if you want to sit with me again, subscribe. I'll be here. I'm Daniel. I'll see you in the late hours.